So welcome to the Destination 2044 Comprehensive Plan Periodic Update Kickoff Meeting and Open House. Thank you for coming, and if you haven't already, we wanted everyone to sign in so that you can be notified of future, be provided with future information about events and outreach that we will be doing. There are also agendas on the table outside along with cookies and coffee. I'm Nick Bond. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Port Orchard, and tonight I'm here with my staff, Jim Fisk, Senior Planner, and Josie Rademacher, who is an Assistant Planner. Our consultant team that is here is AHBL and Makers Architecture and Urban Design, and we have Wayne Carlson from AHBL, Alex Campbell from AHBL, and Ali Masterson from AHBL. And from Makers Architecture and Urban Design, we have Scott Bonjukian and Queenie Jipaya, and both Scott and Queenie are Port Orchard, South Kitsap natives. So tonight's presentation agenda, we are going to give an overview of the purpose of the comprehensive plan. We're going to explain the scope of the comprehensive plan update. We're going to discuss opportunities for public involvement. We're going to describe the format of the workshop. We're going to set out the next steps in the update process and answer any questions that you all have. So what is a comprehensive plan? The comprehensive plan is a guiding document for the city. It includes a vision, goals, policies, demographic information, identifies capital projects, and charts a course for the future of the city. Under the Growth Management Act, cities are required to update their comprehensive plan every 10 years. And this is actually 8 years after our last periodic update. The legislature has recently changed the requirement for the update to be a 10-year, every 10-year event to correspond with the decennial census data release. And so the next one of these will not occur again until 2034. So why do we need a comprehensive plan? Every community needs a vision. Historically, growth in Washington state has led to issues of urban sprawl, loss of farmland, natural resource degradation, and uncoordinated capital facilities. In 1990, the Growth Management Act was passed by the legislature, which required for us to plan for the future. The plan will guide where housing and business growth should occur, how that growth is served by transportation and other infrastructure, and how we can enhance the natural environment and community character. So who decides what the comprehensive plan says? You do, but there are some caveats. Our plan must comply with the Growth Management Act, the multi-county planning policies known as Vision 2050, as adopted by Puget Sound Regional Council, and the countywide planning policies as adopted by the Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council. Since our last periodic update, the GMA, the multi-county planning policies, and the countywide planning policies have all been updated through legislation and through our regional planning process. So we're gonna walk through each step of the hexagon that is on this slide, starting with the outer ring, the Growth Management Act, and going in to the local comprehensive plan. And so we're gonna start out by talking about the Growth Management Act. So the Growth Management Act mandates that most cities and counties in the state develop a comprehensive plan. We could spend hours talking about the ins and outs of the Growth Management Act, but instead I'm going to focus on the goals as enshrined in state law, the goals of the Growth Management Act. So the first goal, concentrating urban growth, sprawl reduction, regional transportation, affordable housing, economic development, property rights, permit processing, natural resource industries, open space and recreation, environmental protection, early and continuous public participation, public facilities and services, and historic preservation and shoreline management. The Growth Management Act has had numerous updates since 2016. One of those major updates is the requirement to plan for housing that's affordable to all income levels. Other requirements of the Growth Management Act include a required update to the Critical Areas Code for the city to adjust for best available science. So that includes wetland buffers, stream buffers, geologically hazardous areas, and we are still waiting for the state guidance on that best available science to be released. And there are also other requirements being debated by the legislature during the current legislative session that could come into effect before this process is over, and many of those focus on housing and affordability. So we're going to have to wait till the end of this current session to find out what additional requirements we may have to plan for. The next rung of the hexagon on my previous slide is the regional planning organization, Puget Sound Regional Council, and the regional plan, which is Vision 2050. The Puget Sound Regional Council is a metropolitan planning organization formed by jurisdictions within King, Kitsap, Pierce, and Snohomish counties. The Puget Sound Regional Council is where the region comes together to make decisions about transportation, growth management, and economic development. Vision 2050 is the regional plan written and adopted by Puget Sound Regional Council. Some key themes of Vision 2050 include adopting a regional growth strategy, setting population and employment growth targets, climate, social equity and justice. Climate and social equity and justice are new additions to the regional plan. Developing in centers, basically focusing growth in places like downtown Port Orchard or downtown Bremerton rather than in outlying areas, and also additional housing policies. And I want to take a moment to explain the map that is on the screen in front of you. In Vision 2050, there are what are called regional geographies, and you'll see that there are city boundaries outlined in different colors, with Seattle and Bremerton being kind of an orange, reddish-orange color. Port Orchard is more of a yellow color, and those correspond to the various regional geographies, and each of those regional geographies has a certain amount of growth allocated to it through the Vision Plan. Within the PSRC planning areas, growth is distributed both by county and by regional geographies. So you'll see that the plan really wants to focus growth in metropolitan cities, which for employment and population growth is the largest chunk of growth in all of the 4 counties. Within Kitsap County, Bremerton is our metro city and is supposed to take the bulk of the growth, 34% of population and 35% of county employment. Core cities, in this case Silverdale, is to accept 16% of the county's population growth and 26% of the county's employment growth. And then high capacity transit communities are to accept 36% of the population growth and 32% of the employment growth. And I want to point out that Port Orchard is a high capacity transit community because of the foot ferries we have downtown, as well as the Kitsap Transit bus service that's available in the city. And we are also the other high-capacity transit communities are Bainbridge Island and Paulsbo. So that 36% of growth gets split between Bainbridge Island and Paulsbo, and together the high-capacity transit communities have to plan for those population estimates. At the third rung of the hexagon, a few slides back, is the Kitsap Coordinating Council, Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council, which actually adopts the population and employment targets at the city and urban growth area levels. So you'll see that Port Orchard is in this list, and we have been allocated population of 10,500 people and 5,400 jobs that we have to plan for within our existing city boundary. So the countywide planning policies also mirror the policies, the goals and policies in Vision 2050. They're a little bit more refined and they account for local preferences, but generally we went through Vision 2050 with all of our peers in Kitsap County and adjusted our countywide planning policies to try to implement that Vision 2050 document. And now in our local comprehensive plans, we have to take those countywide planning policies and make sure that our plan is consistent with them. So the 2024 periodic update of the comprehensive plan for Port Orchard must plan for population and employment targets. We must implement new Growth Management Act requirements. We must achieve PSRC certification, and that's very important because any federal grant money that passes through PSRC requires that we be certified by PSRC as compliant with Vision 2050 in order to receive transportation funding to fix our roads or make other transportation investments in the city. We have to work with Kitsap County to review urban growth boundaries, and that's an urban growth boundary is essentially the area outside of the city limits where we are expected to grow and eventually annex. So there are a couple of proposals right now to increase the size of the urban growth boundary, and we're meeting with Kitsap County on that as we speak. We must ensure that planned infrastructure capacity matches growth targets, and we must plan for housing that is affordable to all incomes. So what is included in a comprehensive plan? The elements, the comprehensive plan is broken into elements or chapters, And currently they include land use, housing, parks, natural systems, economic development, utilities, transportation, and capital facilities. And in this update, we are adding a climate element to deal with the new climate goals from PSRC, and also because it is expected that the legislature may add a climate element as a requirement under pending legislation. But because we're in the PSRC region, we're going to go ahead and address it as a separate element. And with that, I believe Scott is going to come up and talk about the remaining process for this evening and how we intend to do our public outreach.
All right. Thanks, Nick. Again, I'm Scott from Makers Architecture and Urban Design. So part of our role, working with city staff and AHBL, who's the prime consultant on the project, is helping with the public outreach, and we're also going to focus on some of the issues of land use, which is basically how the city divides up where residential and commercial development's allowed, and some of the housing policies that Nick was mentioning. So a key part of public outreach that we always like to do with comprehensive planning is ahead of all the elements that Nick just mentioned with transportation, parks, land use, is also have a section in the plan that talks about the city's vision for itself over the long term. And most cities and counties that do comprehensive planning do have this kind of vision process. And the old plan in Port Orchard, which was adopted in 2016, also has this. And so we're going to be looking at how to update it. This is just a quick screen grab of some of the existing visioning content that the current plan has, kind of listing targeted outcomes for the future and talking about how there are different connections in the city between people and neighborhoods and the natural environment and the planning process. Let's see. So just to zoom in a little bit on the current list of targeted outcomes, we wanted to highlight these. There's 14 bullets here in the introduction of the plan. So we want to take a good look at these, see if they're still relevant, and if they still accurately represent the community's aspirations and hopes for the future. In fact, we have a couple boards in the back with the same list that we'll ask you to put some dots on tonight, kind of rate how you think we're doing on those. We'll also assess how much progress has been made on all these objectives since 2016. And I put some red underlines under those keywords here because some of the things that are unique to Port Orchard and kind of it seems like the key pieces of it, Port Orchard's identity, are perhaps worth carrying forward. Everything from preserving and making historic downtown attractive and vibrant to protecting sensitive environmental areas. And so that's a lot of information currently in the plan for visioning. What we suggest is consolidating some of that into a very simple vision statement, which is a 1 to 2 sentence agreement of shared desires for the future that's developed between the city staff, community members, and the city council and the planning commission. It kind of points the way to a common direction and provides a little bit of a foundation for the entire rest of the plan to follow. It's usually developed as a public-facing expression, and it's usually developed for the city as a whole, as opposed to having a vision statement for individual neighborhoods. So a couple of examples of vision statements from other cities that we've worked on over the years, from Anacortes and Moses Lake. You can see here, there's also a word cloud that was developed for the Anacortes project. Just kind of mention that the word choices in the vision statements are usually very carefully done to reflect the local unique situation that the city is in, reflect kind of the unique natural environments or elements of the economy that want to be highlighted. So we would suggest doing something similar for Port Orchard that kind of gets at the essence of what the city's identity and hopes for the future are. And what you can also do to provide some more information is have value statements, or principles that have kind of some supplemental information about key goals that help define the vision statement. And you kind of have that already with the earlier slide I showed with some of those other targeted outcomes and connection statements that Port Orchard has. So to kind of kickstart, get some early feedback on what a vision statement might look like, we want to ask you all right here some basic questions about your loves for Port Orchard, what you're concerned about for Port Orchard in general, and what your hopes are for the future. And we were originally going to do this by phone, but I think we have few enough people in here that we can just shout out answers. If we want to kind of do a round of questions, if folks are comfortable with that. We also have sheets that you can write your answers down if you want to do that later. But yeah, just to get the juices flowing, does anyone want to start with just a few words about what you love most about Port Orchard today, and why you moved here or why you work here? Um,
We live in a farm of woods, and that's obviously one of the nicest places around to live. I would love to be able to see more nice things to go to and visit, restaurants and things like that downtown here. I remember a couple of years ago, I sent an email to Ivory Restaurant, say, hey, this is a vacant building down there. You guys ought to think about moving over here. You can really attract a lot of people, or something like that. And I don't think I ever got a response, but I think that's what we really like to be able to see. And my wife was wondering how come we haven't got a new library yet.
I think that's in progress. Any other loves, whether it's related to business, the environment, waterfront?
I'm fairly new here, and I've been here about a year and a half. And what I love about it is that every single person here helps every other person to make this a better place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically a movie set out of a Hallmark movie, or it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen in my life, and that's why I'm here. So it just feels right, and everybody is in it together, which is great.
Good summary, thank you. It's a strong community. Yeah.
I think that Port Orchard is pretty unique amongst other towns in its diversity. I mean, we have a lot of not only people of other colors and ethnicities, but also economic backgrounds. So you have everybody all the way from some of the upper middle class or richer people down to some of the the less privileged people. So it offers a lot of opportunity for mingling, and is not so stuck to one side or the other, which I like.
Great, thank you. Anyone else on loves? All right. How about concerns? Are there any current trends or just things about town that concern you, whether it's related to infrastructure or the natural environments, housing costs have all kind of come up recently. Any concerns that we should kind of keep at top of mind as we go about the planning process?
As a business owner, I would say my biggest concern is that there are a lot of absentee building owners for the primary development areas within the downtown.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But other than that, I mean, and just that we're going to be able to do the growth in a way that's going to be manageable.
Thank you. Any other concerns?
Do you want to give, yes, I'll give you a couple of my concerns.
Sure.
One of my concerns, and not to, I would like to see Port Orchard be more homogeneous. And when we do the comprehensive plan and when you do your housing study, is to make sure that we don't have a west side of town and an east side of town, but to make sure town is the same. And one of my concerns is we tend to put infrastructure where we're having growth, which right now is on the east side, and we're neglecting or could neglect some of our historic neighborhoods. I also believe that the city is more than 3 or 4 blocks of Bay Street. I think that's a minimal part of the city of Port Orchard.
Great, thank you. Okay. I think some of that overlaps with the last question about what you hope happens in Port Orchard, but I'll ask you to think really long term. Obviously, it's easy to react to things happening today, but thinking 5, 10, 20 years down the road when your children or grandchildren are moving into town and what the city will look like then, are there any reasons or ideas that you're optimistic about for Port Orchard looking like at that time.
So we'll have a vibrant downtown and that everyone, there will be something for everyone and there will be a mix. I agree with, because of the tie to Bremerton and the military and people coming and going and the world cultures that we get to touch every day, that some of that will emulate and resound through this area.
Great, thank you. Other hopes of any kind?
I'm hidden back here, but I hope that people take a more active role in participating in our public processes and public engagement. We have well-attended meetings in the future.
Yes, so thank you all for being here. Okay, well, I think that's good. That'll help us get started. So the next step with all that information, we're gonna digest that. We're gonna bring some suggestions and options for what a short 1 to 2 sentence vision statement could look like to the next public meeting, which I don't believe is scheduled yet, but you'll get notice of that. And we'll try to go through the actual statements in real time and do some wordsmithing and editing it based on your feedback, and or if it's at a planning commission or city council meeting, we'll talk directly with them about that. And that'll approach. If we find consensus, we'll start to finalize that, and it'll end up in the first draft of the comprehensive plan. So, yes. So that, I believe, concludes that, and I'll turn it over to Alex to talk about the rest of the planning process.
Hi there, my name is Alex Campbell. I work for AHBL. We're a consultant for the city working on the comprehensive plan update, so we're excited to be out here today. Thank you everybody for showing up. I know it's not easy on a work day in your own free time to show up. Kind of to focus on what Nick said, obviously public engagement is huge for us. This isn't just a process for the city to take on unilaterally or consultants to come in and kind of provide a community vision on behalf of a community. So really, you guys being out here today really helps us set the framework for this update process. And any feedback that we get will help us frame our next steps. So to that end, appreciate Scott kind of setting us up and kind of get the juices flowing a little bit for what hopefully is some meaningful feedback that we get from you guys tonight following our presentation. Just to take a step back from our visioning process and give you guys an update just really of this comprehensive plan process as a whole or at large is really we're going to break it down into a few discrete tasks. And the first step is kind of our background analysis. So our initial evaluation, we've completed a majority of these steps, and this is really our front end process before we dive into any of this. And really what this consists of is collecting a lot of information about current city trends, building trends, population data, getting back to what Nick had mentioned, there's a lot of background information both from the state and regional level that comes down and impacts our community process as we do this plan update. So making sure that we're aware of all this stuff and setting the framework of what is realistic to include in this plan and what we have to include in this plan. We want to establish a schedule for this update process, which kind of transitions us into the public engagement piece. The number one note that I want to really bring home tonight is that the public engagement piece isn't a singular discrete task that happens one time. It happens throughout the entirety of this process. So really making sure that this plan is being updated in line with the community vision as we go through this update process is paramount. This is a plan for the community to be developed by the community and used by the community. It's a vision for 2044, and we want to set the framework of how we get there. As a part of that, we created the public participation program, which has been adopted by the city council at this point. And really that sets our framework of how do we interact with the public? How do we engage the public? How do we reach out to them? And how do we get their feedback, not only in a one-way format, if they provide us comments, send us emails, but how do we do more meetings like this? Interactive elements where you can ask questions and get answers in real time, and maybe that impacts some of the feedback that the public has to provide. So this is gonna, as I mentioned, continue throughout the process as this update goes on. From there, we really start to get into the bulk of the comprehensive plan update. So this is where we start to get into the document as currently adopted and we're gonna look at, okay, what elements need to be updated from a regulatory standpoint, what has to be included, what did we hear from our community up to this point, and then how do we incorporate that feedback into the actual language of the comprehensive plan. And really important from our end is there's a lot of policy materials out there. There's a lot of information even in our city's comprehensive plan. So we want to make a plan that doesn't just sit on a shelf. We want people to pull this out and use it and look at it and understand that, hey, I can get a sense of where my community is going in the next few years. So the feedback throughout the process is paramount to that piece. As a part of our public engagement plan, tonight is our first major step in our public engagement process. So kickoff and visioning is the reason we called it the kickoff. We'd want to lay down the framework and get your feedback so we can apply them to these draft updates as we move towards kind of our next discrete step, which is our final draft update. So as we go through the public process and really start to hone in on some of this updated language and making sure that we're compliant with all the regulations coming down from the state and regional levels, we want to make sure that the community understands where we're at. We're going to bring it to Planning Commission and City Council. So we'll have, as planned right now, a couple more public workshops, very similar to this, and then both Planning Commission and City Council public meetings as well. So there's a lot of opportunities to stay involved in this process. It's about a 2-year process. So as we get towards the adoption phase, we have to have this plan adopted by the end of 2024 to remain compliant, as Nick had mentioned, and remain eligible for federal funding, which obviously is kind of paramount. It's not beneficial to anybody to leave some kind of money opportunities on the table, particularly for infrastructure. So we want to make sure that our plan is adopted by the end of 2024, and that includes not only our comprehensive plan, but also updating the city's development code in association with what gets updated in the comprehensive plan, making sure that the two speak to one another and they're consistent with each other. We'll go through SEPA environmental review, essentially make sure that everything that we've identified in the plan and all the updated items are compliant with environmental laws at the state level. And that ranges from things from infrastructure to aesthetics and a wide range of things. And then at the end of the process, City Council adopts a plan, PSRC certifies a plan, and then we enact the plan as we grow towards 2024. So from a public input standpoint, the public participation program that I referenced really sets a framework for the city to be able to update the comprehensive plan webpage, which is a hub of information related to this process. It's a good one-stop shop for anybody that's interested in where are we at today, what's the information that we're using to update our plan. We have direct mailings and public notices out to the community at large, workshops like tonight, and we'll have a couple more that we have in the works, not scheduled yet, but as we get further down this draft process, we'll get those scheduled. And then interviews and surveys with the community. In addition to those items, comment forms that we receive, both just kind of one-off comment form if anybody has. Oh, 1 second. Back to the loves, concerns, and hopes. So if anybody does have public comments, I just kind of want to drive home the point that you don't have to provide them here tonight. This process is ongoing over the next couple of years. So please be engaged as we continue. You can contact city staff. They're a great contact. On our agendas that we provided tonight, we have a separate email that we set up specific to this comprehensive plan, so we can focus some of that feedback directly where it needs to be. And then obviously the Planning Commission and City Council, the elected officials that are going to adopt these plans are going to be a part of our public participation program as well. So specific to tonight, really the baseline for tonight is we want to get your feedback of where we're at today as we kick off this process. Scott had kind of laid the groundwork on the target statements that are in the city's current comprehensive plan. There's 14 individual statements in the comprehensive plan, and we have some boards that we just want to kind of check in with you guys and see how we're doing in achieving those targets, because it's important that we utilize the policy material that the city has on hand already. There's a reason that that's been completed and adopted, and this is just updating this plan to make sure that we're on track. So this is our first step in making sure that we are. To break down some of our stations, we have 3 major kind of discrete stations, and following our presentation, we'll take a brief little break. And then it'd be great to get you guys back in here and start to interact with some of these stations and provide feedback. The first of those stations is this comprehensive plan target statement boards that I had just mentioned. And that's in the back of the room here. And it'd be great, we have a series of dots, and really it's just kind of a sliding scale for each of these target statements, just checking in, how are we doing in achieving those? And then we'll take that feedback and start to kind of understand, okay, there's a lot of concerns in one area, or other areas the community thinks that we're on track. Confirming these target statements is really important to us because it's our initial take at the public involvement process. It's going to guide our update work as we begin these draft processes or draft documents. And then it provides us a guide for a positive future of Port Orchard. Are these target statements still accurate? Do they need to be updated? And can they be consolidated, as Scott mentioned, into a summary statement of 1 to 2 statements that really guide the entire process as a whole? Our next kind of discrete station is our sub-area planning efforts, or countywide center planning efforts. So there's 3 countywide centers that have been previously identified in the currently adopted comprehensive plan. And we want to focus some of our efforts on there, primarily around the Bethel-Sedgwick area. So we have a couple maps over here on my left. And what would be great is, after our break, if you could interact with that and start to identify what are some unique parts of these areas. Is there anything that really sticks out as appropriate or inappropriate land uses, particularly in those areas? And just as an overarching statement, understanding that, again, this is our preliminary look, and we're going to get into more detailed planning for these areas. But we just want to get your initial feedback and understand from a community perspective what's important for these areas as we start to undergo this process. The third station is our transportation network, and we kind of envision this as an open dialogue. What would be great is we'll have a couple staff over here manning this station, and this will be an opportunity for you to provide feedback of what locations are working really well, what locations maybe aren't working well from a transportation perspective. And it'd be great if we could get your feedback not only from a motorized transportation perspective, but a non-motorized perspective. Think bicycles, even equestrian, really anything non-vehicular. And then from a pedestrian perspective as well. So what this board will allow you to do is kind of identify specific areas on a map and provide us with open feedback, and that can be kind of whatever you see fit. So following tonight's workshop, what we're going to do is take all the information that we get tonight and summarize what we heard, and then again apply those to our draft plan updates and really set the foundation as we begin to dig into some of the text of this comprehensive plan. And then we'll prepare for additional public engagement opportunities, which include a policy workshop, which we're really going to start to dive into the policies and goals of the comprehensive plan. And then the land use strategies workshop, which is where we start to identify what uses are appropriate where throughout the city, in particular to our sub areas over here. So again, appreciate you guys coming out tonight. Any feedback that we get is going to go directly into our comprehensive plan. So we encourage you to ask questions, provide feedback, and know that anything that we hear tonight is going to be heard by the city staff and applied to the update as we move forward. So thank you guys, appreciate it. So from here, I think we can kind of take a break. We have some light refreshments out front. Feel free to grab coffee if you're feeling wild, or water, cookies, and then we'll get the station set up, and feel free to come back at will and ask questions and provide feedback. Oh, sure, yeah, and if you have general questions now, that'd be great too. So I think it's kind of open format from here.
Will this presentation will be on the Portage website?
Yeah, we'll get this uploaded, and then we'll record it next week. So we'll do it before that. Big issue. Well, I kept looking back because I was like, is it perfect? Stop.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, before that, that'd be great. place a dot wherever they're either concerned, or, hey, this is working really well, I hope we hear some of that. Usually, but, yeah, yeah, for sure. We will, it's kind of at large, so our goal is that we want people to kind of place a dot wherever their thought is, and then follow up with, okay, what does that mean? And then we'll tie it to it. So if we could prompt them almost in a numeric 1, 2, 3, and then have them do the same thing here, so that way following meeting, we can correlate the two.
As the rookie councilman, I have to get them for others.
Yeah, I'll be here with you. So you're.
Listen, I'm just trying to. No, they tell me this is very fair
It's interesting that the original studies that were done for Park Woods had most of the traffic flow. They're finding that that was going back. It seems like that's your strength. So, yeah, the most city is, to my place.
Yes, and that's what I want. So you tell me what.
In terms of bike routes or bus routes, you're saying your crossings and all, generally good, get you where you need to go.
Yes.
If they were just more frequent, maybe just adding a
So once you account for what's already there's that little area of it, maybe redeveloping this corner or. This is actually the easiest part of the corner here where they created this about 10 years ago. That's probably. This is all wetland. So I appreciate it. Yeah, this starts going downhill.
Like I mentioned earlier, I mean, this is
super steep.
kind of city ordinance like here, this all critical areas.
This is a western here, and then this is a commercial path.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of my brother actually wanted to be here. He's money right now. He had a big truck, big Chevy truck, and so he was really willing to draw down. He lives out, of course, he lives out in once in a week, like, you know, all the way too much transit out that way, but perhaps if it was more available later in the day or earlier in the day or harder for you, he didn't have the option to drive all the time. And even you did have the option, so you know what, driving sucks.
I'd rather.
Okay, so that's where we're at. Okay.
So getting working back was a challenge.
Some of these by sub-areas, so they're kind of associated with one another. If there is any particular land uses, there's like in particular sub-areas, this will just kind of help us. Yeah, set the program. Yeah. Sure. Don't feel like you have to.
It's always when it dies, we
So I see R1 and R2 residential zoning, and of course, when I was city planning, I have to interact with that just for the
used to be more of a community center, more large park.
If I could just do that square right now.
Let's meet here.
But not everybody understands that. They stop, they go, there's some trouble. It's gonna be coming down Opry with Berry Lake. We have here, so try to do shoulders, they already have very good shoulders. Actually get out the road, then there's, you know, it's really no place to walk out of the shoulders. So here's another people around and put in a separate pathway. Basically, somebody said, you raise it all the way down.
long list, but where else can we go? It's easy to kind of, what those are.